A single arrow pierced the freezing wind. A colossal white wolf lunged, its jaws snapped inches from a trembling man. But death came for the beast instead. The shaft buried deep into its spine. The monster crashed to the earth. High above, a lone silhouette stood upon the jagged cliff. Raven-black hair whipped in the gale. The young archer lowered his bow. In the bloody gorge below, chaos reigned. Steel clashed against fangs. Desperate men fought a tide of ravenous wolves. Spears thrust. Daggers flashed in the dim light. A final spear tore through the last wolf's throat. Silence fell over the carnage. The archer plummeted from the heights. He landed with silent grace. A breathless warrior offered his gratitude for the life-saving strike. This rescued soul was no commoner. He was a noble young master. Wiping blood from his face, he smirked. The archer's skill, he declared, was worth every single gold coin. The spear-wielding captain scoffed. It was not merely a fair trade. They had struck a divine jackpot. The archer was named Luot Tien. His lethal precision defied logic. It rivaled the terrifying power of a level 1 awakened ability user. But Tien wore no smile. He locked eyes with Captain Gao and young Master Yu. His voice was cold. They must remain vigilant. The true nightmare had yet to begin. He pointed to the carcasses. These shadow wolves belonged to the treacherous Black Wind Gorge. They had no place hunting in these borderlands. A sinister shift had corrupted the territory. Captain Gao sensed the brewing storm. He barked an order to Husan. The swift scout must breach the shadows ahead. Any sign of danger demanded an instant retreat. Husan vanished in a blur. His awakened ability, extreme speed, tore through the wind. Young Master Yu waved off the tension. He boasted of their overwhelming might. Captain Gao was a fearsome peak level 1 warrior. Their vanguard was virtually unbreakable. Arrogance blinded the young noble. Ordinary threats would break against their strength like water on rock. Danger was their daily bread. This was an era of apocalyptic invasions. Dimensional rifts had torn the very fabric of the world. Beyond those cosmic tiers lay absolute peril. Yet, they also held treasures of unimaginable power. Here stood Luot Tien, a mere mortal untouched by awakened abilities. He was a Pathfinder, a mortal guiding gods through hell. Young Master Yu broke the silence. He whispered a dark rumor from 3 days ago. A crimson colossus had descended upon the Blackstone Rift. It wielded an earth-shattering battle axe. Man or beast, it slaughtered everything in its path. A true avatar of slaughter. Wang Yu, the wealthy patron, shivered at the thought. Tien's gaze darkened. In these cursed lands, nightmares always breed truth. Such an entity defied their limits. Its power surely surpassed a level 2 existence. Encountering it would mean absolute annihilation. Yu spread his hands. The entity loomed at 2.5 meters tall. Its true nature remained a terrifying mystery. A part of his foolish heart hungered to witness it. Captain Gao slammed his spear into the earth. He silenced the boy's death wish. Their sole mission was securing the mythical wind spirit pearl. The prize was an artifact of absolute purity, a majestic treasure meant to conquer the heart of the flawless Miss Ming. Tien observed the love-struck fool. Was a woman's beauty truly worth marching into the jaws of death? Yu flushed with indignation. He scoffed at the archer's ignorance. A single glimpse of her divine face would command any man's soul. The banter died instantly. A suffocating pressure crushed the air. Weapons were drawn. Captain Gao roared a warning. Death was approaching. They advanced into the abyss. Crimson painted the jagged rocks. Yu cursed under his breath. Husan had vanished without a single flare. Tien tightened his grip on his bow. Absolute silence signaled absolute ruin. Captain Gao forced the vanguard tight. One wrong step meant the grave. They rounded the jagged gorge. A macabre masterpiece of slaughter awaited them. Torn flesh and shattered bones littered the earth. Captain Gao and Tien knelt in the gore. They read the gruesome story written in the blood. An elite vanguard had fallen. They were butchered like livestock. Tien examined the lethal strikes. The massacre happened in a singular heartbeat. Only a demon of terrifying speed could forge such carnage. A sickening crunch shattered the silence. The fog parted. The architect of death knelt before them, feasting upon the fallen. A monstrous mutation of nightmare. The Ghost-Headed Demon Leopard. Its demonic visage dripped with fresh crimson. Beneath its cursed claws lay the ruined body of Husan. This apex predator defied the laws of nature. Its speed eclipsed any known peak level 1 horror. Dread paralyzed the ranks. The beast had evolved. It had shattered its mortal limits. A terrifying level 2 calamity stood before them. Reality blurred. A mercenary vanished into its maw in a shower of blood. Its hollow eyes locked onto Tien. It lunged like a bolt of dark lightning. Young Master Yu roared in defiance. He threw himself before the archer. He swore to shatter its momentum. Tien must pierce its demonic gaze. Primal energy erupted. Yu unleashed his ape demon strength. His muscles swelled with titanic power to block the strike. Behind him, Tien knocked 3 arrows. His focus sharpened into a lethal point. The bowstring snapped like thunder. Cold steel buried deep into the demon's left eye. It shrieked in agonizing fury. A shockwave of pure rage sent them flying. Unbroken, the nightmare charged again. Captain Gao exploded into action. His spear ignited with aura. He caught the massive claw in a shower of sparks. Behind the clash, a mercenary fell to his knees, his spirit utterly broken. Tears of despair washed his face. A level 2 calamity was a death sentence. He wailed against the cruelty of fate. He refused to die in this cursed gorge. Gao spat a mouthful of blood. The situation was catastrophic. This beast possessed an unseen terror. It commanded the very air itself. A horrific roar shattered their eardrums. A devastating sonic cyclone erupted. The vanguard was swept away like dead leaves. Bodies slammed into unyielding rock. Tien clawed his way through the pain, forcing his shattered body upward. The world faded into darkness for the others. He stood entirely alone. The colossal shadow of the beast eclipsed the sun. Its killing intent locked onto him, ready to rip his soul apart. Rage incinerated his fear. His blood boiled with absolute defiance. This abomination had to be erased from existence. The demon launched itself for the final kill. But destiny intervened. An ancient, terrifying energy awakened within the archer. Apocalyptic black lightning violently struck the earth. The sky trembled. The demon froze in sheer, primal terror. The heavens tore open. A colossal axe plummeted from the sky. It struck the earth with devastating force. Solid rock shattered into oblivion. Hellfire erupted from the tremors. The world began to fracture. Tien stood amidst the choking smoke. He reached into the blinding sparks. The intense heat swallowed him whole. His fingers locked around the ancient weapon. A terrifying aura surged. He dropped into a flawless battle stance. He lunged like a shooting star. His blade carved through the Ghost-Headed Demon Leopard. He launched himself into the air. His grip on the handle tightened. A majestic, world-shattering swing brought the massive beast crashing down. Agony fueled the monster. Demonic wrath blazed in its eyes. It forced its broken body upward. Tien closed the distance instantly. He mocked the pathetic creature. A beast was merely a beast. His fist shot forward like lightning. The demon had anticipated another axe strike. His knuckles pulverized its skull. Dark blood erupted into the air. The colossal monster tumbled. It violently rolled across the blasted earth. Tien stared down his prey. The beast struggled to its feet. He commanded it to perish. Terrified, the monster turned to flee. But Tien was a phantom. He erased the distance in a single heartbeat. The executioner raised his blade. He unleashed his absolute power. The devastating strike fell. The very earth cleaved in two. The demon was reduced to blowing ash. The battle was over. Tien released his grip. The legendary weapon dissolved into nothingness. He gasped for breath. This overwhelming strength was absolutely intoxicating. It was a dangerous high. But the artifact harbored pure malice. He could not wield it for long. That violent energy demanded a toll. It would inevitably twist him into a mindless beast of slaughter. His monstrous aura faded away. His body shrank back to its mortal limits. He scanned the bloody battlefield. His wealthy employer and the escort team lay at death's door. This complication was dangerous. He tore through their surviving luggage. A faint glow caught his eye. It was a mid-grade healing elixir. Young Master Yu was disgustingly wealthy. A treasure like this was incredibly rare. It could pull a man back from the gates of hell. He forced the glowing liquid down the noble's throat. Suddenly, a shadow fell over the cliffside. Footsteps echoed in the silence. Tien slowly rose to his feet. The newcomer's eyes locked onto him. It was Jian Bao, a fearsome patrol officer of Black Rock City. Tien masked his tension. He calmly asked the man his purpose. The officer's gaze swept the destruction. He had been prowling the perimeter. A terrifying surge of power had drawn him here. He demanded the truth. Had a mysterious colossus passed through here? Tien spun his web of lies. A mutated horror had ambushed their squad. They were pushed to the brink of annihilation. He claimed a towering savior had intervened. This phantom giant had slaughtered the beast, and then it had vanished into thin air. Jianbao scoffed at the pathetic lie. His killing intent spilled over. Surrender the blood axe and keep your life. Tien maintained his flawless poker face. He feigned absolute ignorance, but the officer saw through the deception. He knew Tien was the legendary giant. He knew the bloodline he carried. This was the son of Luong, the disgraced former chief of Black Rock. This was a fractured world. Terrifying dimensional rifts scarred the earth. Beyond these tears and reality, humanity clung to a fragile peace. But from the darkest abysses, nightmares clawed their way out. These dimensional horrors brought only absolute calamity. Every stronghold forged its own shield. Elite squads of awakened warriors were born. They stood against the looming apocalypse. They hunted the rifts. Tien's father was a titan among men. Luong led the vanguard of Black Rock City. His power was genuinely magnificent. 3 years ago, the shadows swallowed him. A routine expedition became his grave. His final order bound his son. The cursed axe must remain forever hidden. Jianbao's greed consumed his rational mind. The fabled weapon actually existed. Seeing this devastation was believing. He mocked the fallen hero's devotion. The great chief truly cherished his weak son. He had left behind a divine artifact. But fate was smiling upon Jianbao tonight. This supreme power would be his stepping stone. He sneered at Tien. Flaunting such majesty was a fool's death wish. It was an open invitation to the Grim Reaper. Jianbao's patience snapped. He roared his final demand. Where was the supreme weapon hidden? Surrender it, or die a gruesome death. The officer's eyes burned with madness. Tien's expression turned terrifyingly cold. He would gladly grant the man's final wish. The crimson aura exploded into existence. The blood axe materialized once more. Tien coiled his muscles. He launched himself like a cannon. The devastating blade descended. Jianbao was thrown like a rag doll. He violently shattered the cliff wall. Blood dripped from his lips. Yet, a manic grin stretched across his face. The rumors were entirely true. An unawakened insect possessed this godly might. The artifact was far beyond his wildest dreams. The sheer power was absolute insanity. Tien's voice was the chill of death. The secret had been revealed. Now, the witness had to be buried. Jianbao crushed the earth beneath his boots. He ordered the arrogant brat to kneel. Slaying a newborn mutant was a child's game. This was the real battlefield. His aura spiked dangerously. He unleashed his second awakening. Iron body! He basked in his invincible glory. But Tien was already swinging for his neck. Sparks rained as metal clashed. Jianbao blocked the cursed blade with his bare flesh. Tien's eyes widened in shock. The officer barked a wicked laugh. He demanded more blood. Tien unleashed a storm of fury. Strike after strike rained down. Jianbao deflected them all like a steel mountain. Tien shifted his footwork. He relentlessly hunted for a weak point. Tien charged with a devastating clenched fist. Jianbao was blasted backward into the distance. A blood-curdling scream tore from the officer's throat. The weapon's murderous energy was invading his body. But Jianbao's iron flesh was a fortress. The battle of attrition favored the older man. The artifact's borrowed power was failing. Tien's vision blurred with bloodlust. The corruption was sinking into his soul. If he didn't sever the connection, his humanity would burn. He would become the very monster he hunted. Desperation forced his hand. He pulled his final trump card from the shadows. A vial of glowing frost. He swallowed the liquid whole. Jianbao watched in absolute horror. The kid had lost his damn mind. It was the forbidden winter elixir. His soul would be eternally entombed in ice. There was no salvation from this death. Tien extended his hand. He gripped the blood axe once more. A terrifying aura erupted. He unleashed his ultimate technique. The extreme blood blade slash. Bao trembled in pure terror. Yet he desperately braced himself. The devastating strike shattered the earth. Blazing flames erupted straight into the heavens. The blazing inferno faded. The ultimate strike had taken its toll. Tien gasped for air. His stamina was completely drained. Bao took the devastating impact head-on. His powers shattered instantly. Shock consumed his mind. A Tier 2 beginner defeated by a mere mortal? It was impossible. Tien loomed over him like a grim reaper. He snatched away the fallen blade. The verdict was death. But the defeated man begged. He claimed his pathetic life still held value. The truth spilled from his trembling lips. Their formidable leader was coming. Captain Ross was already hunting for the hidden treasure. Tien would face certain doom against such immense power. The desperate man offered a trade: spare his life. In return, receive a safe route to escape the captain's deadly pursuit. Tien completely ignored the desperate plea. He coldly stated that the man simply talked too much. But beneath his calm exterior, a heavy tension settled. He never expected Ross to be here. Captain Ross was no ordinary foe, a Tier 2 high-level warrior, an absolute powerhouse. His name commanded fear across all of Black Rock City. The stakes had just skyrocketed. The world was different after the mysterious invasion. Now only awakened beings could stand against the monstrous hordes. Wang Yu stood at the First Awakening intermediate level. Captain Gao Yuan had reached the First Awakening peak, and Jiang Bao possessed the power of a Second Awakening beginner. The path to true power was absolute. It all began after surviving the First Awakening. A warrior must climb through beginner, intermediate, high, and peak ranks. Only then could they grasp the Second Awakening, and for the legendary few, the third. But Tien defied all known laws. He possessed no natural awakening, no internal core. His terrifying strength flowed solely from the mysterious blood axe. His mortal vessel was a cage. It severely limited the ancient weapon. The absolute maximum strength he could draw was only equal to a Tier 2 beginner. He craved overwhelming power. It was the only way to find his missing father. To survive this hellish world, he had to force an awakening. He had attempted the breakthrough countless times. Yet, failure haunted him. The violent aura of the blood axe always shattered the delicate process. The harsh truth slowly dawned upon him. Ordinary ability stones were garbage. They lacked supreme purity. They were simply unworthy of the blood axe's divine recognition. He disguised himself as a humble wilderness guide. He manipulated the awakened warriors around him, all to safely navigate the deadly rifts and harvest higher-tier stones. But his deadly secret was out. The colossal phantom of the blood axe had manifested. Bao had seen it. Captain Ross would inevitably uncover the truth. There was no turning back now. Even if he retreated to Black Rock City, it was useless. The captain's deadly hunt would follow him to the ends of the earth. A single spark of hope remained: the legendary Wind Spirit Pearl, an extraordinarily supreme ability stone. It was his only desperate path to survival. His mortal frame was crumbling. Agony ripped through his veins. He needed a secure haven to heal. Only then could he hunt for the ultimate pearl. The Ghost-Headed Demon Leopard had left its foul stench. That terrifying scent would linger. Lesser beasts would tremble and stay far away. This blood-stained ground was temporarily safe. Silence fell over the ruined battlefield. He turned his back on the unconscious men. He vanished into the desolate shadows without a single word. The golden rule of the wasteland is absolute. Never ignite a flame in the dark. It summons nightmares from the abyss. But tonight, Tien had absolutely no choice. A small campfire flickered to life. He consumed the winter elixir. Its freezing essence clashed against the boiling rage of the blood axe, a dangerously desperate shortcut. The backlash was merciless. Brutal frost chewed at his bones. Just the lingering residue of the elixir threatened to shatter his mortal body into dust. Shadows crept closer as he meditated. A vile demonic spider stalked its prey. It inched toward his throat. Without opening his eyes, a lethal strike flashed. The monster was instantly pinned to the cavern wall by a single, flawless arrow. Soon, dawn broke across the wasteland. It was time to march. The crucial intelligence echoed in his mind. Exactly 3 days ago, a rare sighting of the Wind Spirit Pearl, hidden deep within the treacherous Wind Thunder Cliff. Time was slipping through his fingers. Rival forces could seize the treasure at any second. He erupted from the cave. A trail of freshly slain beasts marked his deadly path. The atmosphere suddenly grew suffocating. The light vanished. He had crossed the cursed threshold. Welcome to the Dark Shade Forest. Lethal predators prowled the shadows. The Shadow Mantis swarm, peak first-tier monstrosities. Tien concealed his presence entirely. He observed the silent killers from afar. A chilling realization washed over him. This ecosystem was entirely unnatural. Such terrifying beasts had no business roaming the mere outskirts of a forest. Under normal circumstances, he would have bypassed this death trap. But desperation fueled his steps. He had no time to bleed. Thankfully, he had forged a countermeasure. He hurled a bundle of venomous, burning weeds. Thick, suffocating black smoke exploded outward. Within seconds, the fearsome mantis swarm scattered in absolute panic. The battlefield was obscured in darkness. This was his exact window. Like a phantom in the night, Tien surged forward through the blinding haze. He burst through the toxic cloud. His eyes scanned the grim terrain. And then, he spotted the true nightmare. A demonic hellflower. An early-stage, Tier 2 abomination. His dangerous gamble had paid off perfectly. Every calculation was flawless. He had finally reached the heart of the abyss. This was the deepest core of the dark shade forest. A gaping, pitch-black cavern loomed ahead. The legendary hidden shortcut straight to the Wind Thunder Cliff. This secret route was practically a myth. Only the most battle-hardened veterans knew of its existence, those who had bled for years inside the Blackstone Rift. It was a fragment of a memory, a whispered rumor from his father's old comrades. Suddenly, the shadows shifted. Instinct took over. He vanished into the dense canopy above. A massive monstrosity trampled into the clearing, a vicious fang beast, another peak first-tier horror. It abruptly slammed on its brakes, paralyzed by the looming hellflower. The massive beast tried to retreat in panic, but its fate was already sealed. Countless glowing eyes pierced the darkness. The shadow mantis swarm had completely surrounded their prey. Panic seized the beast, but time had already run out. A sinister vine coiled tightly around its trembling form. The hellflower dragged its prey into its abyssal maw. It feasted. Around it, the shadow mantises approached. They knelt in dark reverence. Tien watched in grim silence. A terrifying truth became clear. A symbiotic nightmare. The mantises were hunting for this demonic bloom. A frontal assault meant certain death. He steadied his breathing. He would wait. He needed the perfect opening. Darkness swallowed the realm. The hellflower finally shifted. Its massive petals closed shut. The mantis guard settled into a silent vigil before their master. Now was the time. Tien bolted forward like a phantom. But fate was cruel. A monstrous mantis suddenly leaped into his path. His bow sang. 3 arrows flew in perfect harmony. They pierced the beast right through the skull. Stealth was no longer an option. The bloodbath was inevitable. The forest awakened. The remaining monsters and the hellflower stirred with fury. Retreat was impossible. Tien summoned the blood axe. The dark transformation took hold. He became a blur of violent motion. He charged straight into the fray. His blade carved through the shadow beasts with ruthless precision. The heavy axe danced in his grip. With his free hand, he seized a thrashing mantis. He hurled its massive body straight at the hellflower. A storm of lethal vines lashed out. Tien deflected them with flawless mastery. His axe cleaved the air. Crimson arcs of pure destruction annihilated everything before him. He pushed ever onward. He was a relentless juggernaut. Each swing unleashed deadly crimson waves. The monsters fell to pieces at his feet. These mindless brutes felt no fear. Their endless numbers pressed relentlessly against him. He needed a clearing. He had to obliterate them all in one single devastating strike. He gathered all his might. It was do or die. A colossal tempest of crimson energy erupted. The bloody vortex shredded the monsters and the battlefield to dust. The blockade shattered. He burst through the chaos. The dark mouth of the cave was just inches away. But the hellflower was relentless. Giant thorny vines chased his heels. He raised his axe to block the strike. The crushing impact hurled him deep into the cavern. He hit the cold ground hard. He could not afford to rest. The giant bloom was locked out, but danger still lurked. The mantises could easily pursue him into the dark. He sprinted deeper into the abyss. He ignited his light to pierce the gloom. Up ahead, a sliver of salvation beckoned. He breached the exit. Before him stood the majestic Wind Thunder Cliff. A towering monument of absolute dread. Violent storms raged around its peak. Savage lightning rained down from the heavens. A sudden chill crawled up his spine. Murderous intent flooded the thick air. A deadly presence was rapidly closing in. He swung his axe to block. A tremendous force violently drove him back. He demanded the hidden assailant reveal themselves. The stranger smirked. The legendary blood axe was finally confirmed. The shadows parted. It was none other than Patrol Captain Ross. He stood like a predator stalking prey. Ross mocked his arrival. His long, patient ambush had finally paid off. The grim truth hung in the air. Ross knew about Bo-O's death. Tien calculated the impossible odds. A direct clash meant a swift grave. He had to escape. Tien glared fiercely at his hunter. He demanded to know how the captain had tracked him through this hellish rift. Ross chuckled darkly. Wielding such a cursed weapon openly was foolish. It meant only one thing. Tien was desperately seeking the Wind Spirit Pearl. The captain's logic was chillingly simple. A man out of time has no luxury for detours. This treacherous shortcut was his only possible path. Ross offered a sinister bargain. Hand over the mighty axe and live. A supposed mercy for the old chief's sake. Tien just tightened his grip. If the captain wanted it, he would have to take it in blood. The negotiation abruptly ended. Ross smiled with lethal intent. He would gladly deliver death. He vanished instantly. Tien's eyes widened at the terrifying burst of speed. A devastating blow landed. Tien crashed violently into the cavern wall. The strikes were blindingly fast. Defending against such power was simply impossible. Ross marveled at the weapon's dark majesty. A mere mortal holding it suddenly possessed godlike might. It granted the tremendous power of a Tier 2 awakened warrior. The captain decided to end the game. He summoned his scorching flame art. The very air warped and twisted. An infernal, flesh-melting heat completely consumed the space. The roaring flames closed in. Tien faced imminent incineration. He needed a miracle immediately. Their powers violently collided. A deafening explosion shattered the earth itself. Tien exhaled a sharp, ragged breath. A miraculous chill pierced the inferno. Frost formed around his lips. Raging fire ravaged his entire body. Yet, he stood absolutely unbroken. Ross waited for the agonizing screams of a burning man. He waited for his prey to turn to ash. Then, the legendary axe would naturally be his to claim. But the flames violently parted. Tien unleashed an earth-shattering counterattack. The aura was absolutely monstrous. The raw power easily rivaled a high-ranking Tier 2 sovereign. Ross stepped back in utter shock. This explosive power was completely illogical. Then, he felt the biting frost. The madman had consumed 2 winter elixirs at the exact same time. It was absolute suicide. A human body should have burst from the sheer strain. Defying death itself, Tien roared. He swung the crimson blade again with apocalyptic force. Ross elegantly danced past the crimson arcs of death. He sneered at the boy's crude technique. Raw power without mastery was completely useless. He immediately retaliated with a massive tidal wave of fire. Deadly meteors of flame rained down upon the youth. But Tien defied logic once again. He threw himself straight off the terrifying precipice. Ross could do nothing but roar a bitter curse into the stormy void. The furious captain swore to hunt him to the ends of the earth. Below, the main character plunged. He slammed his weapon deeply into the cliffside. The steel groaned, arresting his fall. He then dropped gracefully onto a sturdy branch below. The desperate gamble had miraculously paid off. He had slipped from the jaws of certain death. He was safe, but only for a brief moment. The battle had cost him dearly. Consuming dual elixirs within the blazing inferno had completely ravaged his insides. His body screamed in absolute agony. He quickly downed a healing potion to stabilize his failing core. The physical toll was incredibly heavy. The demonic power fully receded. Activating the Blood Axe transformation again was now impossible. He was left completely vulnerable. The deadly hunt was far from over. Tien knew the grim truth. Greed draws many monsters. Countless powerful elites would be slaughtering their way toward the Wind Spirit Pearl. He gazed fiercely into the stormy abyss. Let the powerful dragons tear each other apart. Let the bloody chaos rage. Within that perfect distraction, he would finally seize his ultimate destiny. A sudden jade streak tore through the heavens. Tien narrowed his eyes. A powerful presence was closing in. The mysterious woman halted before Ross. She mocked his presence here. Tien watched in pure shock. The woman was defying gravity itself. A Tier 7 powerhouse? A legendary existence? No, that was impossible. The Black Rock Rift was merely a low-level domain. The spatial laws restricted even Tier 3 warriors. A Tier 7 master could never cross this threshold. Ross stood his ground. He sneered at her. If the legendary Lady Ming coveted the Wind Spirit Pearl, why should his ambition be punished? Her voice carried a lethal promise. Once the tempest broke, mercy would vanish. Only raw power would dictate the victor. Tien absorbed every word from the shadows. The pieces aligned perfectly. This was the legendary Lady Ming that Wang Yu feared. An overwhelming aura radiated from her form. It was a majestic display of power. Sadly, the vast distance shrouded her face in mystery. Her obsession with the pearl revealed her secret. She commanded the winds. This aerial mastery was merely a temporary manifestation of her element. He stared at her airborne silhouette. Awe warred with burning envy in his heart. The skies belonged to the strong. Rising to his feet, a distant glimmer caught his eye. It vanished like a phantom. An illusion? No. The brilliant flash erupted once more. The mystery demanded answers. He drew his bow and fired an anchored shot. Gripping the taut rope, he plunged into the unknown abyss. The descent deposited him before a hidden cavern. He slipped into the gloom. A sudden spark of joy ignited within him. A raw thunderstone lay nestled in the dark. These crystalline cores were not priceless artifacts. However, their creation demanded a fierce crucible. They only forged where wild lightning constantly struck. High above on Wind Thunder Cliff, the heavens raged eternally, a relentless chaos of gales and thunderclaps. He once believed the storm bred the lightning. He was utterly wrong. A deeper secret hid here. Suddenly, a blinding bolt of death crashed toward him. Survival instincts flared. He threw himself aside, narrowly dodging the lethal strike. Emerging from the shadows, a monstrous thunder lizard bared its fangs. The beast lunged with terrifying speed. Death charged forward. Tien drew his bowstring taut. He unleashed a barrage of steel. His arrows struck true but shattered instantly. Sizzling energy flared around the monster. An impenetrable armor of crackling arcs shielded its hide. This fiend had not yet breached Tier 2. Yet, its primal fury eclipsed any normal peak-tier predator. The beast swiped. Tien ducked, letting the monster smash the stone wall. In raw power and agility, he was completely outmatched. Worse still, it commanded the lethal wrath of lightning itself. Panic threatened to consume him. He needed a fatal strategy. If this turned into an endless brawl, his grave was sealed. His mind raced through beast lore. The armor had a fatal flaw. The soft underbelly. The unprotected joints connecting its muscular limbs. The lightning shield meant nothing there. One perfect strike would shatter its momentum entirely. The massive lizard lunged. Tien saw his window of destiny. His focus narrowed to a single point. He let the arrows fly. Twin shafts of doom buried into the beast. It shrieked in agony as Tien vaulted backward. The creature staggered, its movements crippled. The tide of battle shifted. It was time for the slaughter. A massive stalactite hung like a guillotine above. Tien took aim at the rocky anchor. His arrows shattered the stone base. The ceiling collapsed onto the screaming beast. The jagged boulders pinned the monster to the earth. Tien stalked forward with a cold gaze. A swift thrust to the skull ended the nightmare. Silence reclaimed the cave. Had his mind not remained razor-sharp, his corpse would be roasting now. Strategy and the environment were his true weapons of survival. A sudden surge of static raised the hairs on his neck. A crystal behind him pulsed with violent energy. The lightning strikes were multiplying. The very air was turning lethal. A tunnel offered an escape route. He sprinted toward the light. Instead, he emerged at the base of a colossal crater. Swirling vortexes of ancient energy loomed above. Tien lowered his gaze into the abyss. An ethereal emerald luminescence twisted within the depths. It devoured the surrounding gales. Hovering in the dead center was the legendary wind spirit pearl. Floating within a fortress of violent cyclones. Claiming this prize would be suicidal. Jagged fissures tore through the bedrock. The emerald radiance throbbed like a beating heart from below. Violent sparks erupted into the sky. Tien stopped breathing. The majesty of the sight crushed his senses. A mythical thunderpool lay before him. The raging tempests outside were a mere illusion. A byproduct. This churning reservoir of pure lightning was the true heart of Wind Thunder Cliff. 6 agonizing hours passed in the shadows. Dawn broke across the sky. The pearl drank the primordial sunlight. A majestic purple mist slowly bled from its core. Without warning, the volatile pool erupted. Waves of liquid lightning crashed against the stone walls. A colossal shadow rose from the depths. A majestic flood dragon breached the surface. Its massive jaws snapped the dawn's purple mist. Satisfied, the ancient beast ignored the floating pearl. It slithered back into the electric abyss. The pieces fell into place in Tien's mind. The pearl was merely bait. The dragon used this legendary artifact to harvest heaven's spiritual essence. The sheer terror radiating from its scales told the whole story. This was undeniably a Tier 3 overlord, likely a newborn dragon, yet its power was absolute. Tien was a mere insect standing before a god. A cold sweat washed over him. One reckless step earlier would have meant instant erasure. The shadows were his greatest blessing. The dying tempest would act as a beacon. The greedy warriors above would soon swarm the abyss. Let those fools become dragon food. Patience was the supreme strategy. He would meld with the darkness, wait for the massacre to unfold, then claim the supreme prize. Miss Ming demanded silence. Storms and lightning converged upon this very domain. Such sacred ground was bound to birth unimaginable treasures. Her desire was absolute. She claimed only the wind spirit pearl. She issued a chilling decree: none shall interfere. Ross scoffed at her arrogance. Her elite lineage meant nothing here. Even if she crossed the Black Rock Rift solely for the pearl, the prize was universally coveted. Titles offered no protection. Only absolute power would dictate the victor. The surrounding warriors murmured in agreement. Every soul fought for themselves. Miss Ming merely smirked. She prayed Ross would keep that foolish bravery. Frustration gnawed at Ross. She was merely a high-ranked Tier 2 awakened. Yet her aura suffocated the very air. In his heart, he knew the bitter truth. He was completely outmatched. Her blade cleaved the raging tornado. The crowd gasped in pure disbelief. She vanished straight into the maelstrom. The ultimate prize beckoned. Driven by pure greed, the horde surged forward. But the tempest was merciless. The weak were instantly crushed by the raging vortex. A living nightmare awaited below. A savage pack of thunder lizards guarded the abyss, high above upon the thundercliff. The wind spirit pearl pulsed with divine light. Ross shouted over the roaring winds. Scaling that cliff was a sheer death sentence. The monstrous beast pack formed an impenetrable wall of scales and lightning. He proposed a tactical strike. 5 high-ranked Tier 2 warriors stood ready. They must divide into 5 vanguards, encircle the horde and annihilate them entirely. The elite fighters nodded in fierce agreement. Miss Ming remained utterly unfazed. She dismissed them with a cold gaze. They could wage their petty war as they pleased. She exploded forward like a phantom. The beasts unleashed a torrential barrage of lightning. She danced through the deadly strikes with effortless grace. Her blade flashed in a divine crescent arc. Multiple lightning streams were severed in a single breath. Inspired by her might, the remaining warriors fractured into 4 strike forces. Hellfire consumed the frontline beasts. Mystical weapons and brutal arts painted the canyon in blood. Amidst the deafening chaos, a lethal shadow loomed behind Captain Gao. His spear spun in a desperate parry. Sparks rained down as he repelled the lethal blow. He roared a frantic warning to young Master Yu. Together, they pierced the monster's impenetrable hide. Pure dread pooled in the veteran's stomach. These were no ordinary beasts. Their feral strength vastly eclipsed any peak Tier 1 monstrosity. He tightened his grip on his bloodied spear. He pleaded with the young noble. One single misstep here would spell absolute destruction. Terror tightly gripped the young master's heart. They had barely crossed the threshold. If the vanguard was this monstrous, what true nightmare waited in the abyssal depths? Bitter regret washed over the young noble. He had dragged a loyal soldier straight into hell. But the captain stood resolute like a mighty mountain. His sworn vow was etched in stone. He would fight until his dying breath. The encroaching horde closed the jaws of death around them. Suddenly, a howling tempest of blades erupted. Miss Ming carved a path of pure slaughter through the beasts. Her piercing gaze locked onto Wang Yu. She demanded to know what fool brought him to this slaughterhouse. Trembling, he confessed his unwavering loyalty. He only wished to secure her the divine pearl. Her response was a freezing, dismissive turn. She banished him from the blood-soaked battlefield. This realm of death was no place for the weak. The harsh rejection completely shattered his resolve. A devastating chasm of true power separated them. She was a peerless goddess of war. He was merely a fragile mortal. Slowly, the deafening sounds of carnage faded. The monstrous horde was completely reduced to ash. Triumphant cheers echoed through the bloody gorge, but their victory was a fleeting, foolish illusion. Above them, the very heavens cracked open. Ominous spheres of crackling azure lightning materialized. Apocalyptic blasts ruthlessly cratered the earth. The blinding bombardment heralded a new wave of sheer terror. The devastating destructive force threatened to tear the world apart. Thick, suffocating smoke choked the ruined battlefield. Blinded, the warriors braced for the unknown horror. As the dust finally settled, cold dread gripped their souls. Absolute death had arrived. A majestic, colossal nightmare towered before them. The Thunder Lizard Beast King had descended. Its oppressive power radiated at the absolute apex of Tier 2. Survival demanded a unified front. They must combine their strength or perish. The desperate vanguard readied their ultimate formations. They turned to their strongest warrior, seeking her command. But Miss Ming's voice cut through the tension like pure ice. Such pathetic tactics were unnecessary. She walked completely alone toward the colossal king. Slowly, she raised her blade toward the dark heavens. A roaring tempest of emerald aura spiraled around her slender body. Her eyes burned with absolute deadly intent. The very air screamed as she swung. The divine blade of wind tore through space itself. In a single godlike execution, the titanic Beast King was instantly annihilated. The explosive exertion severely drained her reserves. She crashed heavily to one knee. Her knuckles turned white around the hilt of her anchored sword. Her breathing was incredibly ragged, yet her indomitable spirit remained unbroken. Dead silence suddenly fell over the blood-stained canyon. Jaws dropped in, overwhelming, absolute awe. The invincible apex predator had been slaughtered like a mere insect. Captain Ross felt a cold sweat run down his spine. That incomprehensible destructive force definitely breached the realm of Tier 3. The stark, brutal reality hit them all. Claiming the Divine Pearl would be a descent into sheer madness. The exhausted survivors finally conquered the soaring cliff. A massive, yawning crater dominated the rocky summit. Hidden deep in the shadows, Tien's lips curled into a wicked smirk. The final stage was utterly set. His sinister, calculating plot was unfolding perfectly. These foolish warriors were nothing but mere sacrificial pawns. They would inevitably bleed dry the lurking thunderflood dragon. He blended perfectly into the abyssal gloom. Patience was the deadliest weapon of an assassin. Peering through a jagged fissure, his predatory eyes locked onto her. The formidable Miss Ming. The divine prize was revealed far too easily. The glaring anomaly instantly triggered her hardened battle instincts. Warning bells violently screamed in her mind. Without a second of hesitation, she retreated from the treacherous edge. A true artifact of the wind naturally masked its own presence. It was meant to be an elusive, untrackable phantom. Locating it should have been a near impossible ordeal. Why was it hovering there like a blatantly baited hook? But the others were completely blinded by avarice. They lunged forward like starving hounds. Instantly, a blinding web of lethal electricity ensnared their bodies. The deadly surge viciously erupted from the dark waters of the thunder pool. Their flesh charred in an agonizing, screaming instant. Like broken dolls, their completely scorched bodies plummeted into the black depths. Captain Ross roared desperately above the crackling electricity. He violently ordered the frenzied survivors to halt. A catastrophic, ancient entity slumbered beneath those cursed waters. Lone wolves would only find a watery grave here. Claiming the artifact demanded absolute, unwavering unity. A towering brute stepped forward, aggressively cracking his knuckles. He would not mince his brutal words. He laid down the absolute, unbreakable law of the vanguard. The divine prize belonged to no one yet. First, the submerged Leviathan must be utterly exterminated. Any cowardly thief who breaks formation will be slaughtered without a shred of mercy. His threatening, murderous glare shifted toward the lone swordswoman. Miss Ming could not play the solitary hero in this battle. Lady Ming issued her cold command. Dozens of awakened warriors descended into the abyss. Their boots slammed against the cold stone. From the shifting shadows, a solitary figure watched the unfolding slaughter. A primordial terror lurked beneath the murky depths. The hunters hesitated. A silent dread gripped their hearts. How could they strike an unseen Leviathan? The towering warrior broke the silence. His strategy was ruthless but brilliant. The beast coveted the wind spirit pearl, above all else. They needed bait. One foolish soul to grasp the prize. Once the monster lunged, they would block its ambush and force it into the light. A heavy finger singled out a trembling warrior. The decree was absolute. Fetch the divine artifact. Terror consumed the chosen man. He fell to his knees. He pleaded with Captain Ross. His spiritual energy was utterly pathetic. It was a suicide mission. Tears of absolute despair stained his face. Weakness held no value here. Without a flicker of hesitation, Captain Ross ended the coward's life. Blood pooled on the stone. From his hidden vantage point, Tien witnessed the cold-blooded execution. A chill ran down his spine. The true nature of Captain Ross was laid bare. He was a tyrant wrapped in human skin. The captain's lethal gaze shifted. Another victim was chosen. Driven by the fear of instant death, the new scapegoat marched toward the cavern's treacherous depths. Silent curses echoed in the man's mind. He leaped toward the floating pearl. Instantly, apocalyptic lightning erupted from the dark waters. Captain Ross smirked. The trap was sprung. The perfect opening had arrived. Roaring hellfire surged forward. Ross violently deflected the incoming thunderbolts. The bait miraculously grasped the glowing orb. A fleeting moment of victory washed over him. Then, massive jaws burst from the abyss. Death had come to claim him. Absolute horror paralyzed the hunters. The creature was no ordinary beast. It was an ancient flood dragon. Pure devastation unleashed. The cavern shook under its tyrannical fury. A colossal tail swept through the ranks. Bodies shattered like fragile glass. Captain Ross gritted his teeth. The situation was catastrophic. This monster possessed the overwhelming aura of a Tier 3 calamity. The giant remained unfazed by the carnage, his battle lust ignited. If they desired the legendary treasure, hesitation meant death. The Leviathan had to fall. The cunning beast attempted to dive back into its watery sanctuary. Letting it submerge would spell their doom. Captain Ross roared. He unleashed an inferno. The very surface of the lake violently erupted into flames. Agonized roars echoed through the cavern. The boiling flames scorched the dragon's scales. It launched itself out of the inferno. Its massive tail decimated the cavern walls. The towering warrior barked his commands. They had to protect their allies. If the serpent picked them apart, annihilation was certain. Dozens of powerful auras flared. They unleashed a unified, devastating barrage. A lethal strike aimed to crush Captain Ross into oblivion. The giant intervened. He braced his massive frame and absorbed the catastrophic impact. He grunted and checked on the fire user. Ross spat a mouthful of blood. He fiercely declared his refusal to die. Suddenly, an overwhelming presence commanded the battlefield. Lady Ming stepped forward. Her voice cut through the chaos like a royal decree. The serpent had devoured the wind spirit pearl. Her eyes blazed with ultimate resolve. She would butcher this beast and rip the treasure from its guts. She challenged the surviving warriors. Who possessed the absolute courage to stand by her side? Suffocating tension gripped the cavern. The air itself seemed to freeze. The flood dragon retaliated. A cataclysmic torrent of lightning tore through the dark. Lady Ming did not flinch. She summoned her sovereign tempest, blade of wind, void breaker. Two primal forces violently collided. A deafening shockwave completely shattered the surrounding air. Lady Ming plunged her glowing blade deep into the bedrock. She anchored herself against the devastating recoil. The survivors watched in absolute awe. The invincible wrath of the thunder flood dragon had been halted. It was a miracle of raw power. A savage grin spread across the giant's face. The nightmare creature bled just like anything else. He pledged his monstrous strength to Lady Ming. Captain Ross ignited his flames. He too stepped into the vanguard. Retreat was no longer an option. So much blood had been spilled. They would claim absolute victory or die trying. One by one, the remaining elites rallied for the final stand. Lady Ming spoke the harsh truth. Her absolute power alone could not pierce its hide. This monstrosity had broken through to the intermediate stage of the third tier. It was a walking natural disaster. With a flick of her wrist, a supreme artifact materialized. It shimmered with celestial light, a third-level treasure, the adamantine silk net. Her strategy was absolute. The vanguard would bind the Leviathan. Once completely trapped, she would deliver the executioner's strike. The sentient beast immediately sensed the danger. It watched the glowing trap spread across the boiling lake. With a terrifying screech, the serpent lunged for the cavern ceiling. It sought the open sky. Lady Ming refused to let her prey escape. She erupted into motion, a tempest of speed chasing a dragon. From the fractured shadows, Tien observed the mythic clash. For a fraction of a second, Lady Ming's icy gaze swept his hidden sanctuary. Their eyes locked. Tien instantly vanished back into the suffocating darkness. Her absolute focus violently snapped back to the colossal serpent. Carried by the howling gales, she effortlessly outpaced the beast. She stood proudly above it. The path to freedom was entirely sealed. Desperation fueled the dragon's wrath. A devastating beam of purple tribulation lightning erupted toward her. Unfazed, she retrieved a sacred relic from her robes, a pristine wind crystal stone. She crushed the supreme crystal. An apocalyptic storm violently enveloped her delicate frame. The wind screamed in absolute submission. She unleashed her ultimate devastation. Stormfall. A transcendent beam of atmospheric pressure fired downwards. It completely obliterated the incoming purple lightning. The pure, condensed tempest shot straight toward the monstrous serpent. The cataclysmic strike smashed directly into the dragon's skull. Scales shattered. Blood sprayed like unholy rain. The paralyzed beast plummeted straight into the waiting trap. The awakened warriors ruthlessly hauled the shimmering net tight. Triumphant roars echoed through the cavern. The legendary terror was bound, but absolute silence was instantly demanded. A single mistake would still mean total annihilation. Every ounce of spiritual energy was completely drained into the net. The trap held fast. Lady Ming descended like an avenging Valkyrie. She landed gracefully upon the struggling Leviathan, her glowing blade readied for the killing blow. The ultimate execution technique was unleashed. Blade of Wind. Spirit Pierce. The ethereal sword violently impaled the creature. The colossal thunderflood dragon shrieked in absolute agony. Even in the jaws of death, the monster fiercely rebelled. Wild, apocalyptic arcs of lightning exploded outward as its massive body crashed toward the deep. A titanic geyser violently erupted toward the cavern roof. The devastating shockwave mercilessly swept the cavern. Warriors were violently hurled against the unforgiving stone. Finally, the monstrous behemoth plunged into the lake. Its colossal frame went entirely still. Broken corpses floated lifelessly beside it. Crimson stained Lady Ming's pale lips. She coughed up lifeblood. Trembling, she approached the fallen titan. Suddenly, massive reptilian eyes violently snapped open. With its dying breath, the beast forcefully expelled the glowing wind spirit pearl. She desperately lunged for the divine artifact. Out of the shadows, betrayal struck. A raging inferno entirely blocked her path. Captain Ross moved in. His greed demanded the supreme treasure. Her eyes turned murderous. She coldly informed him he was stepping into his grave. His fingers grazed the glowing orb. With a violent burst of tempest energy, she ruthlessly blasted him back. The backlash was instantaneous and utterly devastating. Lady Ming violently vomited dark blood. The prize was mere inches away. Yet, her spiritual core completely collapsed. All absolute strength vanished. Her body heavily crashed to the stone floor. Destiny had finally aligned. From the utter darkness, Tien saw his flawless opening. He violently shattered his rocky concealment. Like a striking phantom, he plummeted into the chaotic battlefield. The divine artifact hung perfectly in the air. Time completely froze. Tien's hand closed tightly around the glowing wind spirit pearl. In a masterstroke of survival, he violently buried his battle axe into the sheer rock wall. He hung suspended above the abyss. The absolute prize was his. The prize was his, but the moment his fingers closed around it, a target was painted on his back. Every predator in the realm would hunt him down. He had to vanish. He clawed his way out of the abyss. Charred husks of thunder lizards littered the earth. The sheer devastation painted a picture of absolute slaughter. Fate had shown him mercy. A hidden escape route lay concealed in the shadows. Without it, death was certain. The treasure would have been his tombstone. He leaped through the ancient canopy. A phantom moving through the silent woods. His muscles screamed. The blood axe transformation was burning his life force away. He finally breached a secure haven. He let the violent energy fade into the dark. Silence descended. He opened his palm to reveal the prize. The wind spirit pearl. A divine artifact glowing with untamed power. This was the key. His catalyst. With this sacred stone, the dormant power within his veins would finally shatter its chains. But patience was the armor of the wise. One wrong move meant obliteration. He needed absolute solitude to commence the sacred awakening rite. His greatest secret was safe. Only one man knew the truth of the blood axe. A man named Ross. And Ross had been slaughtered by Lady Ming. The only loose end was severed. As long as he hid his true form, his identity remained buried in the grave. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure crashed down. The air grew freezing cold. Lady Ming materialized from the void. But as their gazes locked, crimson violently sprayed from her lips. She collapsed to her knees. Breath ragged, she swore she meant no harm. The pearl was not her target. She came not as an enemy. She came as a merchant of fate. A high-stakes trade was on the table. The offer was staggering. The core of a thunderflood dragon. A legendary supreme relic, its absolute value completely dwarfed his precious pearl. Her sharp eyes pierced his soul. She sensed the void within him. No aura, no power. She deduced his desperate ambition to awaken his latent strength. Her voice was a raspy whisper. She swore upon her life. The dragon core was a far superior catalyst, a monumental leap toward true awakening. He stood frozen, his mind raced. Her words held absolute truth. He could feel the blood axe trembling inside him, thirsting violently for the dragon core. His eyes narrowed into dangerous slits. How had she tracked a ghost? She confessed nature. A master of the wind element, the pearl resonated with her soul. It acted as an invisible beacon through the treacherous forest. Relief washed over his tense muscles. His ultimate trump card remained hidden. The secret of the blood axe was still his alone. The pact was sealed. A nod of mutual survival. She gasped a word of gratitude. For her, the pearl was a matter of life and death. Treasures soared through the tense air. A perfect exchange in the moonlight. But the moment the pearl touched her palm, her life force vanished. She crumpled to the earth. Tien rushed forward. The scent of blood was overwhelming. He checked her pulse. She had descended into a deep, death-like coma. This woman was a titan, an unstoppable force of devastation. Seeing her this fragile shattered his perception of absolute power. The previous slaughter had claimed its toll. Her internal organs were shredded. Every instinct screamed at him to run, to abandon the dead weight. He turned to leave, but his conscience anchored his feet. He exhaled a heavy, defeated breath. He marched back to the fallen warrior. He hoisted her limp body onto his broad shoulders. He muttered into the silent night. She was blessed by his fatal flaw, a foolish inability to abandon a dying beauty. Shadows swallowed the world. A hidden cavern became their sanctuary. Fire crackled against damp stone. The heavy scent of roasted meat pulled her from the abyss. Her eyelids fluttered open. The firelight danced across the cavern, revealing the scarred, chiseled back of her savage savior. Confusion flashed in her cold eyes. Why spare her? He could have slit her throat, claimed both treasures, and walked away a king. He did not turn around. His voice was steady as stone. True power is earned, not stolen from the vulnerable. A man walks the path of honor. He threw a smirk over his shoulder, claiming his heart was simply too soft for cruelty. A weak laugh escaped her lips. The tension dissolved. She forced herself upward. My name is Ming Lan, she declared. He offered his name, and their hands met. A silent alliance forged in fire. Ming Lan dropped a bombshell. She possessed an ancient art, the sole method to unleash the Dragon Core's terrifying wrath. An oath was sworn beneath the cavern roof. Once her flesh mended, she would become the guide to his ultimate power. The dragon's energy was absolute. She promised a miracle, the birth of a king-tier ability. His eyes widened at the legendary term. Embers popped in the grim silence. They consumed their rations. The conversation shifted to the grand hierarchy of power that ruled their merciless world. Tien recited the known laws. The ranks of the strong. Lower, middle, high, and the devastating king tier. A cruel system dividing gods from insects. Minglan's eyes grew distant. A shadow fell over her face. There was another realm, the mythical god tier. A forbidden power whispered only in ancient scriptures. But raw destruction was not the true measure. The tier was an iron shackle, a genetic lock. It dictated the absolute limit of a mortal's evolution. The revelation struck Tien like a thunderbolt. The foundations of his reality crumbled. This sacred knowledge was completely alien to his ears. His ignorance was not his fault. Black Rock City was a cursed wasteland, a forgotten tomb buried at the edge of civilization. Her words were a grim death sentence. A lower-tier awakening was a curse, condemned to stagnate at level 1, trapped in a cage of mediocrity until death. The chains of destiny tightened. Middle tier maxed at level 3, high tier at level 6. King tier scaled the heavens to level 9. And the god tier? An endless, terrifying abyss. The tragic truth dawned upon him. The absolute tyrant of Black Rock City, the man they worshipped as a god. He was merely a level 3 peak ant, strangled by a middle tier limitation. He could never shatter the ceiling. In a barren hellscape like his home, a supreme awakening was nothing but a fool's dream. The supreme treasures were ghosts, but the true despair ran deeper. The ancient secret arts, the sacred formulas required to break mortal limits, they were completely extinct. He listened to her words in absolute silence. The gravity of the moment settled over him. Fate had rewarded his mercy. Without her intervention, the Thunderflood Dragon Core was utterly useless. Its divine power would have remained dormant forever. Destiny favors the righteous. A single act of kindness had forged his path to ultimate supremacy. A solemn pact was made. She offered her clan's forbidden art as a life debt repayment, but the price was absolute secrecy. He swore an unbreakable oath. The secret would be buried in his very soul. No one would ever know. 3 days passed. Under a canopy of stars, she forged the Moonlight Spirit Initiation Array. It required the dead of night. It demanded the moon's guiding brilliance. His soul would ascend. His mortal senses would magnify 100-fold. Only then could he pierce the treasure's shell. Only then could he absorb its majestic power. Steel your mind, she commanded. The ritual begins now. Ethereal light erupted from her eyes and hands. Emerald runes blazed across the earth. Lady Ming ascended into the air, unleashing a colossal formation with Tien locked at its core. A divine surge crashed through his veins. He felt the heavy chains of mortality shatter. He was ascending to godhood. Raw energy tore through the heavens. Maintain your focus. Her voice echoed like thunder. He plunged into his own consciousness. He hunted for the dragon's essence. He had to seize the primal core and become one with it. His mind crossed into an ancient realm, a desolate void of apocalyptic storms. Countless bolts of terrifying lightning lashed out in the dark. The truth struck him. He stood within the dragon's soul. This raging tempest was its pure, unadulterated strength. He reached out into the storm. The lightning did not burn his flesh. It welcomed him. It hungered to be absorbed. A surge of euphoria washed over him. His strength multiplied by the second. This was the legendary sensation of a true awakening. He devoured the raging storm. A cyclone of crackling energy swallowed him whole. The beast core fused with his brow, merging into his very existence. The sun broke the horizon as his eyes snapped open. Unfathomable power roared through his veins. His shattered internal meridians were forged anew. Lady Ming landed gracefully. Her eyes searched for the truth. "Did you conquer it?" she asked softly. Victory was his. The lightning bowed to his absolute command. It moved as naturally as his own limbs. Yet, a mystery remained. "Why is my lightning blue when the dragon's was purple?" he questioned. She smiled calmly. "You are but a newborn in this realm. A king-tier ability is a tyrant," she explained. "Your mortal vessel cannot unleash its true devastation just yet." He shifted his intense gaze. "Are your wounds healed?" he asked. She nodded, suspicious of his sudden question. His eyes flared with battle lust. He demanded a spar to test his newfound supremacy. A soft laugh escaped her lips. The challenge was accepted. A torrential blast of lightning erupted from his hands. She parried the destructive beam with a single elegant finger. "Impressive force," she acknowledged. "To reach the peak of level 1 upon awakening is monstrous. But your technique is completely hollow. Your stance is broken. Your energy is scattered to the wind. You require grueling discipline to survive." He summoned the blood axe. A crimson aura bled into the air. "Face this," he warned. For a split second, shock flashed in her eyes. Tien hoisted the massive blade. Lightning coiled around the steel like a serpentine dragon. His power skyrocketed to absolute limits. She fired a barrage of fierce wind blades in defense. Tien brought the axe down with apocalyptic fury. A shockwave of pure thunder ripped the earth wide open. The sheer impact hurled Lady Ming backward into the air. She slammed her feet into the dirt, carving deep trenches. She caught her breath. "Is this your legendary secret art?" she gasped. The lightning had violently multiplied his strength. "A terrifying strike," she confessed. "My defense nearly shattered. That power rivals a level 2 Apex Master." His feral aura vanished. He sheathed the weapon. "A mere stroke of luck," he replied coldly. "Luck does not grant king-tier dominance. Only 1 in 10,000 mortals touch this realm. Its supremacy is absolute law. It blesses the chosen with a divine domain. A unique, insurmountable skill. My wind mastery conquered gravity itself. Train with your life on the line. Awaken your true sovereign power soon." His face betrayed sheer ignorance. He thought all wind users commanded the skies. Her melodic laughter pierced the tense air. "The heavens do not hand out miracles," she declared. The winds began to swirl around her. The time for parting had arrived. A king-tier ability. A demonic blood axe. His destiny was a terrifying abyss of infinite potential. "Come to Star City," she commanded. "Black Rock City is a cage for a true dragon." "I will be there," he vowed without hesitation. The winds lifted her toward the heavens. "Do not keep me waiting," her voice drifted down from the clouds. And she was gone. His blood boiled with anticipation for Star City. 2 grueling days of travel passed. The massive gate of the rift finally loomed ahead. He stopped dead in his tracks. The bustling gateway was completely desolate. Not a single soul stood in the normally chaotic zone. A suffocating dread choked the air. The silence was absolute. Even the beasts of the forest held their breath. Then, a shadow broke from the gloom. An ambush. The towering brute from before stepped forward. Mung Chang, a level 1 high-tier warrior, thirsting for blood. A grim confession escaped his lips. Sealing the rift had ignited absolute fury among the masses. Had Tien not arrived, his defenses would have crumbled into dust. Tien narrowed his eyes. This stranger had waited in the shadows, waiting specifically for him. Their paths had never crossed until this fateful moment. Dongchang sneered, demanding an end to the charade. He expected the son of the former patrol chief to recognize absolute authority. After all, his name carried immense weight in Black Rock City. The ultimatum was simple. Surrender the Wind Spirit Pearl immediately. Only then, out of respect for his fallen father, would his miserable life be spared. Tien remained unfazed. His voice was cold as glacial ice. The pearl was already gone. He had surrendered it to Lady Ming. Dongchang scoffed at the defiance. He saw only a foolish boy rushing toward his grave. Death would be the price. Once the boy perished, the pearl would be his to claim. The assault commenced. Dongchang unleashed his mid-tier technique, the adamantine fist. Yet, Tien stood like a mountain. The blood axe materialized, deflecting the lethal blow before launching a brutal counterstrike. Shock flashed across Dongchang's face. The boy possessed monstrous strength. But playtime was over. He vowed to extinguish this fleeting resistance once and for all. He vanished into thin air. A catastrophic shadow engulfed the arena as the Starfall fist descended. Tien's eyes glowed with lethal intent. He warned his foe to embrace the incoming devastation. The stage was set. Destiny demanded blood. Dongchang's demise would consecrate his newest, most terrifying technique. The ultimate execution. Instant thunder annihilation. Crackling lightning surged through the abyss. The majestic current devoured the shadow fists entirely. Dongchang froze in sheer, paralyzing disbelief. A cataclysmic explosion shattered the battlefield. The sheer force of the shockwave roared through the ruins. Massive stone pillars crumbled into dust around them. Dongchang trembled in absolute terror. This boy had only just awakened his core. How could such divine power manifest so rapidly? It defied all worldly logic. His battle-hardened senses screamed the terrifying truth. That final, devastating strike was flawless. It radiated the absolute peak of a Tier 2 existence. A sinister grin curved upon Tien's face. Merely days ago, he was a powerless insect beneath Ross's heel. Now, he stood as a god of war, effortlessly crushing an elite Tier 2 combatant. The intoxicating surge of power was euphoric. He loomed over his broken prey. His voice dripped with menace as he demanded the truth. Who exposed his identity? Fear consumed Dongchang's shattered soul. Begging for salvation, he spilled every secret. Ross had whispered the truth, just moments before Lady Ming ended his miserable life. Regret choked the defeated warrior. Had he known the magnitude of Tien's wrath, he would have remained blind to the secret. Ignorance would have been his sanctuary. Tien's gaze hardened into obsidian. The secret of the blood axe ends here. He offered a chilling farewell. With a single, merciless swing, he severed the traitor's throat. The bloody trial concluded. He breached the sealed gateway. Beyond the rift, the stationed guards froze in absolute dread. Stammering, they questioned his miraculous escape. The portal was supposed to be sealed. Tien unleashed a soul-crushing glare. He ordered them to swallow their questions if they valued their pathetic lives. An overwhelming pressure suffocated the guards. They collapsed to their knees. The boy's eyes burned with the unholy flames of pure killing intent. Silence fell as Tien descended the ancient stairway. The stench of death faded behind him. He reached into his pocket and drew out his communication device. 75 missed calls painted a desperate picture. The name Uncle Lin flashed on the screen. Suddenly, the device vibrated to life. Anxious reprimands flooded the speaker instantly. Panic laced the old man's words. The boy had plunged into the deadly abyss alone. 10 agonizing days had passed. He had vanished like a ghost in the night. Search parties had scoured the desolate wastelands. Their efforts yielded nothing but empty silence. A terrible dread had taken root. He believed the boy had perished in the dark. Tien's voice softened slightly. He confessed the rift severed all worldly connections. He shifted the focus, inquiring if calamity had struck their home. Relief washed over the exhausted uncle. The skies were clear, and peace remained. He commanded the boy to return swiftly. Tomorrow would bring their long-awaited reunion. The Black Rock Rift had consumed 10 grueling days, but destiny had forged him anew. His latent power had finally awakened. Now, the victorious warrior sought the quiet sanctuary of slumber. The morning sun breached the horizon. An abrasive alarm shattered the silence, and his fist ruthlessly reduced it to dust. The hours dragged until 12. 15 in the afternoon. Another mechanical shriek pierced the room, suffering the exact same fate. A chorus of hidden alarms erupted simultaneously, igniting his absolute irritation. Slumber was a luxury he could no longer afford. The summons from Uncle Lin demanded his immediate presence. Time slipped away as he surged forward, racing against the clock. An elderly couple paused on the street corner. They recognized the elusive youth. Curiosity sparked in their weary eyes. They questioned his prolonged disappearance from the mortal realm. He offered a fleeting response. A distant journey had just concluded the previous dawn. Their parting words carried a heavy warning. Do not mirror the tragic fate of your fallen father. A solemn nod acknowledged their ancient wisdom. The wind howled as he dashed along the concrete path. A transport driver desperately flagged him down. The mortal offered a meager discount for his services. The words hung empty in the air. Before the sentence could finish, the boy had vanished like a phantom. He became a blur of pure kinetic energy. Mortal transports were utterly useless to him now. He had transcended into an awakened sovereign. The laws of physics bowed to his will. Divine power flowed through his mortal shell. Crackling lightning propelled his every step. His speed transcended human limits, 10 times greater than his former pathetic state. The journey ended in a blinding flash. He stood before the towering fortress of the Ability User Association. The president's inner sanctum awaited his arrival. Uncle Lin's eyes widened with profound relief. The wandering prodigy had returned safely. Tension dissolved into the heavy air. Tien immediately demanded the nature of this urgent summons. A legendary artifact rested on the mahogany desk. A flawless, high-grade, intermediate awakening stone. A treasure mortals bled to possess. Its radiant glow illuminated the silent room. The elder urged him to claim the divine fragment. It was a beacon of hope to unlock his dormant soul. Tien stood motionless. He softly declared the relic unnecessary. Indignation flared within the old man's chest. Did the boy dare to mock his precious gift? Did arrogance blind him to the stone's immeasurable worth? Tien raised a steady hand to quell the brewing storm. He understood the profound weight of such sacrifices. Countless treasures had been bestowed upon him in the past, even when his useless vessel had consumed them in vain. Confusion clouded the elder's weary mind. The boy's rejection defied all logic. Why turn away the very key to supreme power? The wealth remained his to command. He was a level 3 awakened, the absolute president of the Ability Association. Tien shattered the silence. His latent power had finally awakened. Uncle Lin beamed with fierce pride. He demanded to know the exact rank of this newfound might. A confident smirk crossed his face. King Tier. The words struck the old man like a physical blow. Absolute disbelief paralyzed him. Without warning, the older man lunged. A storm of lethal kicks rained down. Tien dodged with phantom speed. Finding his mark, he unleashed a vicious burst of lightning. The strike crippled the old man's leg, sending him crashing to the earth. Tien looked down at the awkward fall. A perfect split. Uncle Lin cursed through gritted teeth. He branded him an insolent brat and demanded a hand up. The veteran breathed heavily. A king-tier ability. It was an absolutely terrifying force. Tien had only just broken his seals. Yet his aura surged at the absolute peak of level 1. Even a seasoned master could barely suppress him without igniting his own powers. If his father could witness this moment, his soul would roar with pride. At the mention of that forbidden name, the air grew heavy. Tien's gaze hardened. Where had his father truly gone? He had vanished into the abyss. The world declared him a corpse. But Tien rejected that pathetic lie. The truth was hidden in the shadows. Uncle Lin lowered his gaze. His survival was a mystery shrouded in darkness. Years ago, they had breached a twisted dimensional rift. Then, an absolute apocalypse descended upon them. Thousands of elite awakened warriors entered. Thousands were instantly annihilated. A total massacre. They were the sole survivors of that bloodbath. Their salvation was a demonic blood axe unearthed in the ruins. But that cursed artifact bore a heavy price. It violently suppressed Tien's core, chaining his awakening. His father refused to accept that doomed fate. Driven by desperation, he took a foolish gamble. Uncle Lin knew the grim truth. The man had marched back into that hellish rift to shatter the curse. Tien demanded the coordinates to this hell. The old man anticipated this fire. He produced an ancient, runic artifact. A sealed spatial box. He commanded Tien to offer a single drop of lifeblood. Crimson blood met ancient metal. The arcane runes flared to life. A blinding, majestic light consumed the room. The coordinates to the abyss were locked inside. But the seal demanded absolute power. Tien could only shatter it when his strength eclipsed the old man's. Only when he ascended to the realm of level 4. A chilling warning followed. Do not force the seal early. To step into that rift without overwhelming might? It was a guaranteed death sentence. An invitation to total oblivion. Tien gripped the artifact. A solemn vow of gratitude escaped his lips. The king-tier power raged within his veins. He needed to master this devastating force. He demanded a path. Where could he forge this raw strength? The answer was legendary. Star City Ability Academy, the absolute pinnacle of martial education in the southern domain. It was a battleground from their past. Both the old man and his father had walked those sacred halls, yet their talent fell short of greatness. They remained in the shadows as mere unofficial disciples. But Tien was destined to conquer it. If he broke through those gates, his father's spirit would find peace. Days later, a colossal steel beast tore across the wasteland. A high-speed bullet train. Tien rested in the quiet hum of the cabin. A shadow loomed beside him. A stranger demanded passage. Tien shifted to grant him way. Then his sharp gaze caught a fatal mistake. His aura flared. He halted the stranger. The man scoffed at the sudden blockade. Tien's voice was absolute ice. You steal from me, and you think you can just walk away? Panic flashed in the thief's eyes. But arrogance quickly masked his fear. He played the innocent fool. He dared to threaten an awakened with the fragile laws of mortal men. A heavy sigh escaped Tien. Words were useless here. Crackle! A vicious arc of lightning paralyzed the fool. Tien plunged his hand into the shivering man's coat. He extracted his own stolen wallet. Explain this, he commanded. Humiliated, the rat bared his teeth. He spat vile curses at the heavens. How dare an elite awakened meddle in the trivial affairs of mortals? It was a pathetic display of twisted logic. Tien scoffed at the sheer audacity. The rat was preaching morality with stolen silver in his very hands. The steel beast halted. The thief was cast to the armored enforcers. Tien delivered his cold verdict. Suddenly, an unfamiliar presence breached his perimeter. A mocking voice echoed. Playing the grand hero? Are we? Tien locked eyes with the intruder. A blond youth stood there, draped in a pristine white suit. He smirked, already knowing Tien's identity. He proclaimed himself as Chen Hao. He was an envoy sent by the old man. A guide for the new king. Tien offered a curt nod. A warrior's brief sign of respect. The absolute arrogance radiating from the man was blinding. Hao waved off the silent judgment. He bathed in his own glory. He was the lone official disciple representing Black Rock City at the legendary academy. But now, the board had changed. With Tien's arrival, the lonely king finally had a worthy companion in the bloodbath. The beast of an engine roared. The luxury vehicle tore through the neon streets. Tien shattered the illusion. There were no heroics back there. He was merely punishing a fool who dared cross him. A booming laugh erupted from Hao. Absolute comedy. A supreme awakened warrior, robbed blind by a powerless mortal. It was an unheard-of disgrace. Tien's eyes narrowed dangerously. He had allowed the theft. It was a calculated trap to secure absolute proof. He shifted the focus to the coming war. What horrific trials awaited in the entrance exam? He needed to arm himself for the carnage. But Hao merely scoffed. Preparation was for the weak. A king-tier ability was an absolute decree. A golden pass to supremacy. He merely needed to step foot in the arena. The instant his aura flared, the Grandmasters would bow. They would grovel at his feet for a sliver of his potential. The imposing gates of the academy loomed ahead. Suddenly, heavily armed sentinels barred their path. Hao's aura flared with sudden rage. The enforcer stood his ground. He recited the grim decree, a past transgression, a shattered barricade. The Supreme Student Council had stripped him of his passage rights. Hao snarled like a cornered beast. It was an unforeseen disaster. But his mind instantly locked onto the true enemy, the shadowy orchestrator behind this humiliation, that cursed woman. Ming Lan, the absolute enforcer of the academy. The guard offered a wicked grin. Cursing the Grand Inquisitor in broad daylight? A fatal mistake. He tapped his badge. The damning words were already recorded. The blonde warrior instantly folded. Defeat tasted like ash. He stepped out of his chariot and swallowed his immense pride. He spoke words of surrender. In the shadows, his hand moved. He slipped a luxury offering to the sentinel, but the enforcer's eyes turned lethal. Bribery. The foolish gamble had just sealed his doom. They marched toward the grand fortress on foot. The atmosphere was thick with tension. Tien sensed a fatal weakness in his guide. He pressed the blade. Who was this Ming Lan, and why did her mere name strike absolute terror into his soul? He called her a tyrant, a sophomore just like them. She ruled the disciplinary committee. Her methods were absolutely merciless. She would punish her own peers without a shred of hesitation. If anyone dared to defy her rule, she crushed them without mercy. Tien was completely stunned. Open violence was permitted here? Howell smiled grimly. The dark truth would reveal itself soon. Within these ancient walls, power was absolute law. Blatant assaults were strictly forbidden. But a sanctioned duel? That was a flawless disguise for slaughter. To the corrupt student council elites, there was absolutely no difference. Sparring was merely a public execution. Tien called it sheer madness. Was there no justice left in this place? Howell trembled. The true terror was Lan herself, an absolute monster. He had barely reached level 2, but she? She had shattered the level 3 barrier just days ago. The pieces finally clicked. The Wind Spirit Pearl. She used it to ascend her power. Tien never imagined her authority ran so incredibly deep. The fear in Howell's eyes was carved deep. Pure psychological trauma. They soon reached the towering doors, the new student assessment office. Howell stayed back in the shadows. He told Tien to enter alone. He would wait outside. The dormitories would be their next destination. Tien stepped into the grand hall. He handed over his documents with quiet respect. The official frowned. He was far too late. The iron gates of admission were sealed. A full month had already passed. The current freshmen were already forged in the fires of combat. Then the official froze completely. The color drained from his face. His eyes locked onto two terrifying words. King Tier. Was this truly the legendary Luot Tien? Tien gave a single, firm nod. Yes. The official erupted in a frenzy of absolute excitement. He rushed him toward the sacred testing grounds. The standard rules no longer mattered. A King Tier ability demanded immediate entry. The golden gates would open for him. Tien placed his hand firmly on the crystal. Ancient power surged. The stone flared with blinding light. The verdict was absolute. A supreme, dominant King Tier force. The official gasped in sheer awe. The standard gates were sealed tight. But 10 legendary slots existed, and by a stroke of fate, one single seat remained. He prepared the sacred decree. Enrollment was imminent. Then a cold voice shattered the excitement. Halt. Every eye snapped toward the looming shadows. The official recoiled in absolute shock. Director Yan had descended. What was a man of his terrifying stature doing here? Emerald hair framed a face of pure malice. Yanke, the Grand Director of Admissions, his piercing gaze locked onto the boy. Are you Luot Tien? A suffocating aura crashed down, crushing gravity. This man was at least a level 4 master. Yet Tien stood unyielding. He answered without a drop of fear. Yan's lips curled into a wicked smirk. The boy had iron nerves, but Tien saw through the dark act. This man had been waiting for him. The director turned his burning wrath upon the official. His incompetence was a massive disgrace. Such sloppy procedures would never be tolerated. The trembling official dared to defend himself. He was merely honoring the ancient laws, the sacred admission regulations. King Tier anomalies bypassed all mortal trials. That was the eternal law. Yan's smile turned venomous. The law was true, but those 10 sacred slots? They were entirely gone. The official paled rapidly. Impossible. He had just inspected the divine registry. One final seat remained wide open. Trembling violently, he consulted the ancient registry once more. A chilling realization struck his core. All 10 names were already carved in stone. This had never happened in Academy history. 10 special slots, entirely devoured. How could they vanish so incredibly fast? Yan slammed his fist down heavily. The debate was over. The registry was securely sealed. No further inquiries would be permitted in this hall. The official pleaded desperately. This boy was a generational marvel, a supreme talent ordained by the heavens. He begged for a single miraculous exception. Yan's aura erupted in pure fury, fostering an awakened demanded oceans of blood and priceless resources. The decree was absolutely final. The annual quotas were forged by the Wat God Temple itself. Unbreakable divine law. Mere mortals could not alter the mandate. Yan delivered his final, crushing judgment. Wait a full year. Return with the ordinary masses. Time was an absolute luxury. Tien had none to spare. He needed overwhelming power. He had to uncover his father's mysterious fate. He met the director's lethal glare. He demanded immediate entry into the academy. Throw any deadly trial at him. He would conquer it all. A sinister grin twisted Yan's face. The official hung his head in profound sorrow. The path was closed. All hope was dead. Retreat was the only logical option. Until Yan finally broke the heavy silence. There is one hidden path. The entire room froze in deep anticipation. The heavy words fell like rusted iron. The Rift Trial. The official gasped in sheer mortal terror. It was a guaranteed death sentence. Yan's eyes gleamed with dark malice. The Academy forged this bloody crucible for a specific reason. To grant the utterly desperate a final gamble. Their sole duty was to present the yawning abyss. It was the boy's ultimate choice. Willingly step into hell, or walk away in shame. The very air reeked of mortal peril. The trial was a guaranteed slaughterhouse. And this smiling director? He was wildly desperate to send Tien inside. The ambush was perfectly executed. The instant recognition. The mysteriously vanished slots. None of this was a simple coincidence. A massive conspiracy lurked in the shadows. Yan was weaving a lethal trap. Tien locked eyes with the terrified official. Tell me everything about this deadly trial. The grand truth finally unraveled. This academy was a fortress, built directly upon a chaotic abyss, the legendary Stardust Rift. Deep within that deadly chasm laid a miracle, the spirit-cleansing spring, a divine treasure. It possessed the power to shatter mortal limits, forging an ordinary soul into a supreme genius. A cursed gateway. Level 3 beasts stalk the shadows, a realm of pure slaughter, a merciless death trap. The Academy abandoned it as a worthless ruin. No true genius would throw their life away here. Entering meant certain death. Yet ambition dictated a new law. Any level 1 youth under 25 could enter the trial. A desperate gamble. A meat grinder for the bold. The ultimate prize? The spirit-cleansing spring. Claim its sacred waters, and Tien secures instant enrollment. A golden ticket to supreme greatness. The warning was clear. Turn back. Reconsider this fatal path. He possesses a king-tier ability, a supreme bloodline. This risk was entirely unnecessary. Tien offered his gratitude, but his resolve was forged in iron. He would face the abyss. A massive crowd choked the stone entrance. Whispers echoed. Countless eyes locked on Tien. Could this boy truly survive the impossible? The masses called it pure madness. The rift had rotted for 10 years. It was a legendary graveyard. Countless souls had been devoured there in the past. Teacher Song offered one final lifeline. Surrender now. Escape with your life while you still can. Unshaken, Tien declared his absolute confidence. He boldly stepped into the void. Reality warped. He emerged into a scorching, endless wasteland. This was not the Black Rock Rift, an alien realm. The trap was set. He was dancing perfectly into Director Yan's grand design. What was that old snake truly plotting? Suddenly, a lethal chill spiked down his spine. Death struck violently from the shadows. His primal instincts flared. He twisted gracefully through the air. A breathtakingly narrow escape from total destruction. He bounded rapidly backward. A desert giant scorpion. A level 1 apex predator. Without summoning his blood axe, this beast held overwhelming physical supremacy. The venomous stinger lashed out, a blur of lethal steel. Tien sprinted desperately. The ground exploded behind him. A relentless barrage of strikes forced him purely on the defensive. The monstrous tail clipped his side, a devastating impact. He slammed violently into the scorching dust. His patience was rapidly crumbling. One single misstep meant brutal execution. His hand twitched. The legendary blood axe beckoned for blood. Suddenly, his hand froze. A chilling sensation crawled over his skin. Unseen eyes pierced the very void. He was definitely being watched. Mortal machines fail in this dimension. Cameras were useless here. Yet, awakened abilities utterly defy logic. An unknown mystical surveillance tracked his every single breath. The blood axe was his ultimate, world-shaking secret. The Academy held absolute domain over this rift. Director Yan was weaving a highly sinister web. Exposure meant total ruin. Tien locked his powerful aura down. Direct combat was pure suicide. Strategic retreat was his only weapon. He exploded into a desperate, furious sprint for survival. Beyond the perilous rift's veil, Director Yan and Teacher Song stared intently. The mystical scrying screen glowed brightly with Tien's truly desperate struggle. Panic laced Teacher Song's commanding voice. Abort the trial immediately. The boy will surely perish. A king-tier genius falling in the dirt? It was an absolutely catastrophic tragedy. But Director Yan's sharp eyes narrowed. Cold, ruthless calculation. Was his theory entirely wrong? Did this boy truly wield the mythical blood axe? A filthy slum like Black Rock City cannot naturally birth a king. It completely defied logic. His commanding voice was absolute ice. Observe. Let him bleed further. Back in the blazing inferno. The massive beast vanished into the shifting dunes. Violent tremors roared beneath Tien's boots. A sudden eruption of blinding sand and impending death. The colossal stinger struck like a falling meteor. Bones violently cracked, hot blood spewed from his lips. He crashed heavily into the dunes. Then, the true nightmare began. An entire legion of monstrous scorpions arose. Defeating one was a titanic struggle. Facing two was an absolute death sentence. A mere glancing graze had nearly shattered his fragile life force. His flesh was deeply tempered by the unseen blood axe's passive aura. Without that supreme fortification, that last brutal blow would have instantly sent him to the afterlife. His desperate mind furiously raced. A rapid tactical calculation, the beast's fatal, glaring weakness. These scorpions absolutely loathed water. A single oasis meant pure salvation. But he was currently drowning in an endless ocean of golden sand. Wait, a sudden flash of tactical brilliance. Even desert apex predators desperately require hydration to survive. The monstrous beast's lair was extremely close. Cold logic strongly dictated a hidden oasis must be nearby. He rapidly tracked the winged beast soaring high above. Avian life strongly signaled water, a desperate, life-or-death gamble. He wagered his very soul on this single theory. He aggressively burned his remaining stamina. A thunderous roar suddenly shattered the air. A colossal claw obliterated the earth, violently launching Tien like a broken doll in a blinding storm of chaotic lightning. His sturdy pack barely absorbed the fatal impact. He violently tumbled across the jagged rocks. Agonizing pain flared, but his iron will ultimately prevailed. He scrambled to his bleeding feet. The desperate sprint violently continued. Blazing hope ignited in his weary eyes. A shimmering, life-saving oasis. The ultimate gamble was gloriously victorious. He violently pushed past his absolute limits, a majestic, desperate leap. He gloriously shattered the serene surface of the lake. Violently bursting from the crystal depths, he fiercely faced his monstrous tormentors. A defiant, gloriously disrespectful middle finger boldly pierced the heavens. "Come claim my head right now, I completely dare you." His arrogant roar proudly echoed. The dunes terrifyingly answered. A horrifying tide of pincers breached the sand, an overwhelming, absolutely suffocating army of endless death. Surviving that hellish gauntlet was an absolute, undisputed miracle. But his triumphant smirk completely vanished. The horrifying beasts did not halt. They marched fearlessly into the crushing depths. They genuinely feared absolutely nothing. Inevitable death was calmly waiting toward him. Absolute panic surged. He carved through the water with literally everything he had. His brilliant strategy had utterly and completely crumbled. The mysterious center island offered absolutely no true sanctuary. He was completely trapped like a cornered rat. The ultimate ultimatum heavily weighed on his soul. Was it finally time? Must he unleash the deeply forbidden blood axe? Rapidly nearing the shore, a mystical anomaly powerfully pulsed. A transcendent, glowing energy barrier completely enveloped the land. What ancient, incomprehensible magic was this? Fear was a foolish luxury he simply could not afford. He boldly breached the shimmering veil. Dragging his heavily battered body ashore, he steadily marched into the deep emerald abyss. Breathtaking, ethereal beauty entirely surrounded him. A flawless paradise forged in ancient myth. His heavy boots touched the sacred soil. The chilling gaze of the unseen watcher, instantly and completely severed. He was finally, truly alone. Panic seized Teacher Song. Tien had crossed into the Forbidden Island. He rushed the report to Director Yan. The director grimaced. The truth was already unfolding before his eyes. The projection stone flickered. Its ancient magic died upon the lake's shores. The screen went pitch black, total blindness. Dread settled in their stomachs. Death lurked in those shadows, but their mortal fears could offer no salvation. Tien was entirely isolated, abandoned by the world. A monstrous desert giant scorpion breached the shoreline, yet fear did not cloud the boy's eyes. There were no prying eyes left, no more hiding his true might. A cruel smirk formed. He summoned the legendary Blood Axe. The monstrous beast coiled around him. Lethal pincers snapped. Venomous fangs descended. Tien stood immovable as a mountain. A fearless grin split his face. He swung his weapon toward the heavens. Violent lightning erupted. A devastating crimson arc ripped through the beast, horns shattered like glass. He contorted in midair. Roaring thunder wrapped his form. He became an avatar of pure destruction, preparing the next execution. These level 2 abominations were nothing but mere insects now. He surged forward like a tempest. Razor-sharp steel severed their grotesque claws. A storm of relentless slashes painted the ground red. When the tempest finally settled, he stood panting. Every single beast lay butchered at his feet. This mysterious realm pulsed with ancient secrets. Hope flared within his chest. The legendary spirit-cleansing spring had to be hidden here. A colossal, majestic tree dominated the island's core. Its towering presence kissed the heavens. Tien stepped into its shadow. Overwhelming spiritual energy washed over his skin. He dashed toward the colossal roots. The ultimate prize was surely waiting within. His boots ground to a lethal halt. Primal instinct screamed a warning. The soil beneath the massive canopy was an absolute wasteland. Dead, barren, unnatural. Even in eternal twilight, some wretched weed should survive. Yet, nothing lived. His sharp eyes tracked a flock of birds circling the perimeter. He leaped with predatory speed and snatched a wild bird. Without hesitation, he hurled it into the dead zone. Instantly, a blinding golden light erupted. The creature burned into nothingness as it shrieked in midair. A cold sweat coated his spine. The sheer devastation was terrifying. He needed absolute proof. He ripped out a wild shrub and tossed it into the void. Instant annihilation. The flora was erased from existence. Yet his piercing gaze caught a crucial detail. The earth beneath remained completely untouched. The pieces of the deadly puzzle aligned. The soaring bird, the rooted weed, both pulsed with life. The dirt did not. This radiant aura was a harvester of souls. It devoured vitality itself. A perfect, deadly perimeter. One wrong step, and he would have been ashes. Blind arrogance would have been his grave. He survived by a hair's breadth, but the massive obstacle remained. How could a mortal pierce this divine execution ground? The sacred waters of the spirit-cleansing spring beckoned him. Its divine salvation lay locked within that colossal trunk. Bitter frustration gnawed at his mind. So close, yet blocked by an insurmountable wall of death, he studied the murderous glow. It flashed spontaneously, chained strictly to the tree's shadow. What was the true source of this localized annihilation? His eyes shifted upward. The radiant flora adorning the branches felt deeply sinister. Bizarre golden petals clung desperately to the highest canopy. The lower branches were completely barren. Not a single blossom graced the inner shadows. Initially, he assumed these radiant blooms thirsted for pure sunlight, but basic logic tore that theory apart. Even sun-starved shadows would nurture a stray blossom. This was entirely unnatural. Two facts remained. Radiant golden petals above. A soul-devouring golden flash below. Like a lightning strike, the horrifying truth hit him. The deadly flash and the serene blooms were one and the same. These were no gentle gifts of nature. They were lethal, bloodthirsty parasites. The ancient tree was their feeding ground. Moving with silent grace, he scaled a neighboring trunk. He summoned his great bow. A single arrow was drawn taut. Crackling thunder infused the iron tip. He unleashed the devastating projectile toward the golden canopy. The arrow shrieked through the wind. A direct strike seemed guaranteed. But the parasite blurred with unnatural speed. It dodged, yet the violent electricity exploded outward. The monstrous blossom blackened and plummeted to the earth. His grim theory was verified. These were horrifying organic entities. Their movements utterly defied mortal vision. His thunderous foresight had been his saving grace. The beast evaded the steel, but not the wild storm. Yet, arrogance meant death. He had to measure his elemental dominance precisely. A barrage of thunderous arrows tore the sky. Volcanic shocks incinerated the demonic swarm. The grim mathematics of battle became incredibly clear. His devastating lightning carried a lethal radius, exactly 5 centimeters of pure destruction. He analyzed the chaotic web of electricity. Parasites lingering dead center survived unscathed. They had slipped completely beyond his divine reach. The strategy was forged. He must command the storm perfectly, weave an impenetrable web of thunder, a shield tighter than 5 centimeters across his entire being. This electric armor would incinerate the golden ambush. He would march straight through hell and claim the sacred hallowed. He drew a deep, stealing breath. Blue arcs of power flared to life. He wove the thunderous mesh, but agony ripped through his veins. His energy reserves were instantly drained. The electric shield refused to expand. His awakening was far too recent. His cultivation rank was pitifully insufficient. His raw, untransformed might rivaled absolute peak level 1 warriors. But that was pure muscle, a fleeting blessing granted by his king tier awakening. Deep within his core, the harsh reality lingered. His spiritual vessel was fragile. He remained a pathetic, entry-level novice. A suffocating despair loomed overhead. The path was entirely sealed. Suddenly, a stroke of absolute genius flashed across his mind. Volume alone would not suffice. The lightning net needed to expand. To do this, he thinned the very threads of his aura. The difficulty multiplied tenfold. Failure after failure. It was still too small. It had to cover everything. He pushed his core to the absolute limit. Darkness swallowed the sky. Dawn eventually broke. Only then did the chaotic sparks finally stabilize. He had conquered the technique. A perfect sphere of crackling electricity encased him. He crowned it the lightning shield. With a heavy breath, he stepped toward the barren wasteland. The shield flared to life. He sprinted into the abyss. Danger choked the very air. Immediately, the terrifying reality of this domain struck him. Vicious golden blooms lashed out. The electric barrier repelled their physical strikes, but they were monstrous parasites. They devoured his lightning aura at a terrifying speed. His mana reserves plummeted. He pushed his legs to their absolute breaking point. He lunged into the dark hollow. The moment his boots hit the earth, the shield shattered into nothingness. Death had merely grazed his neck. Shredded golden petals clung to his flesh. He analyzed the demonic flora with a cold gaze. Gathering his breath, he ventured deeper into the subterranean tunnel. The cavern plunged into an endless void. He leaped into the darkness. He controlled his descent along the stone walls. Suddenly, the ground vanished completely beneath him. His instincts took over. He twisted in the void and struck the cavern floor perfectly. Here, the spiritual pressure was suffocatingly thick. Mere seconds in this atmosphere made his lightning roar. He stepped forward. Before him lay the legendary spirit-cleansing spring. It was the absolute source of this immense power. Legends claimed these waters could forge a mortal body into divine steel. He wasted no time. He had to claim this power. He plunged into the glowing depths. He closed his eyes to cultivate. Instantly, a heavy frown formed on his face. This was wrong. The admissions teacher promised a total metamorphosis. The sacred water certainly fueled his core. His electrical aura surged with violent intensity. Yet his flesh remained stagnant. There was no miraculous rebirth. There was no physical forging at all. Doubt clouded his mind. Was his vessel already too strong? The blood axe and his king-tier mastery had already pushed him beyond mortal limits. A grim thought surfaced. Had he hit the absolute ceiling of human potential? If these waters were useless on him, he had walked through hell for absolutely nothing. He analyzed the glowing liquid once more. The spiritual density was undeniable, but it lacked the primordial essence needed for true evolution. This puddle could not transform anyone. It was a mere decoy. His eyes narrowed. The true treasure had to be hidden nearby. A blinding flash erupted overhead. He snapped his gaze upward. Suspended in the shadows hung a stone leviathan. Light pulsed from its gaping maw. The entity was alive. It darted through the cavern like a falling star. It breached the water surface, then instantly retreated into the stone jaws. Revelation struck Tien like a thunderbolt. That wisp of light was the true essence, the real spirit-cleansing spring. He blasted off the ground in pursuit. He peered into the statue. A majestic, spectral fish swam within a hidden basin. It darted to escape. His hands clamped down like a steel trap. He descended back to the cavern floor. The divine essence thrashed in his palms. It was born from the magical ley lines. A supreme treasure that had developed a soul. Greed brings death in this world. If he stepped outside with this divine entity, the strong would ruthlessly slaughter him for it. He made a ruthless choice. He swallowed the entity whole. Agony exploded through his veins. His blood felt like boiling lava. He threw his burning body into the grand pool. Violent shock waves ripped through the water. He fiercely consumed every drop of the pool to survive the burning. Finally, the hellish torture ceased. His physical vessel felt weightless. The metamorphosis was an absolute triumph. He summoned a spark to his palm. The destructive resonance was beautiful. A ruthless smile painted his face. The thunder within his core had evolved. His aura was now devastatingly potent. It had multiplied in sheer destructive force. He had shattered his limits. Level 1 peak achieved. Even barehanded, his raw power could instantly crush an ordinary level 2 beginner ability user. But raw power was nothing without mastery. His dominion over the lightning element had reached a terrifying new realm. The electricity no longer felt like a mere spell. It was his own flesh and blood. He infused his very soul into the voltage. This was the absolute pinnacle of martial evolution, a true transformation. And thus, another chapter of this epic saga concludes. The battle never truly ends. For your weekly dose of legendary chapter updates, seek out my secondary domain. Search for Manhwa Updater. Do not fall behind on this glorious journey. Secure your place among the update vanguard. Your relentless support fuels this channel. Thank you for watching. Keep your auras blazing, stay legendary, and prepare yourselves for the next epic encounter.